to the girded mind. In our previous entry, we talked about how David had allowed the ark of God to be brought back into the city on a new cart, and how that Uzzah had reached up to steady that ark and was smitten of the Lord. And this was a tremendous lesson in the life of David, that it is important, even essential, that we inquire of the Lord as to how we approach the things of God. It probably seemed like a wise thing to do, to put the ark on a new cart. And the Bible actually uses the term new twice in referring to this cart. They probably said, well, it's a new cart, surely that this ought to be a noble thing, because the ark deserves a new cart. But there is no substitute for obedience. Not even a new cart could substitute for plain, simple obedience. Now, this was a lesson that would have been learned early on by Saul, where God said to Saul, "Behold, to obey is better than to sacrifice," because obedience is the highest form of worship that we could possibly offer unto the Lord. Our submission unto Him and our willingness to do what He has said. G.W. North once said that obedience is the most important lesson of all, and it is essential to gaining any kind of real spiritual knowledge from God. So we know that obedience is key to having spiritual understanding. Now, understand that the ark of God represents the throne of God. Certain Messianic Jewish believers that I know have some theories along this line, talking about how, as you would go into the wilderness tabernacle, you had a sense that you were actually ascending, going up in stages until you finally reach the Holy of Holies, which is symbolic of the throne of God. Now, you will know from Isaiah 6 in particular that the Bible talks about cherubims or seraphim that cry, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of His glory." And these cherubim or seraphim actually go around the throne of God day and night crying, "Holy." And we see this same picture as we look at, of course, artist renderings and what we know to be the account of the building of the wilderness tabernacle, that there were cherubim that were to be actually embroidered into the veil that was separating the holy place from the holiest of all. And when you get into the Holy of Holies, there is the ark of God, and the ark again has the cherubim pointing at each other, overshadowing the mercy seat. So the ark of God represents the throne of God. We're talking about God coming and restoring His relationship with man. God returning to sit on the very throne of the heart of man, to make His throne in the heart of man. Now, I want you to think for a minute about the logic of how God dealt with Uzzah. Now, can you imagine for a moment, in some sense, being disobedient in how the ark of God is to be bore about or carried about, when you've been given plain instruction from the Old Testament, and yet the ark of God itself represents God's authority? It represents the throne of God, the place from which, I guess we could say, that God would be dispensing His orders, and those orders were being carried out. Now, this is a great conflict. We cannot, on the one hand, be disobedient in our attempt to see the throne of God established in the hearts of men. We have to go about these things God's way. We have to follow His divine order. And, of course, that order is found in the pages of His Word. Now, you will know that the Scripture says that as they were bringing the Ark of God in 2 Samuel chapter 6, I just want to read this, verse 5, "And David and all the house of Israel played before the Lord." They played before the Lord. And they had all manner of instruments made of fir wood, and even harps and psalteries and timbrels, and on cornets and on cymbals. And when they came to Nashon's threshing floor, Uzzah put forth his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen shook it. The anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God smote him for his error, and there he died by the ark of God. Now think of the awesomeness of this. Here is a group of people that are playing before the ark of God in what we could consider sort of a form of would-be praise and worship. But in the midst of that would-be praise and worship, you have a blatant defiance of God taking place. Derek Prince once pointed out, and I believe it is very important, that when our worship becomes play, we are in great danger. And the children of Israel had no idea how much danger they were in by recklessly trying to handle the things of God. This would be the first of two major lessons that David would learn when it comes to leaning upon our own understanding or allowing human ideals to be interjected into the things of God. I believe these things are exemplary. I think we should pay particular attention to them. There is